And a lot of companies, they want to, with their commercial card program, set up spend restrictions. And that's what we're going to talk about here at the end of this. So to set up spend restrictions, you're going to go to company management, search company, and you're going to go back to that online request screen, or maybe you've set that up as a quick link, like you recommended earlier. You can go there, and there's a module for managing spend restrictions. There's a page that gives you a pretty good overview of what these two different tabs are. I'm going to briefly explain them here. The merchant group code. These are going to be groups that you set up, that you have full control over, that groups together those merchant category codes. These are standardized across the industry of different merchants, meaning places that you buy from. So, for example, retail stores, groceries, gas stations, those all come with an industry standard merchant category code, MCC, not to be confused with MGC, that's in eZBusiness. So essentially, the first thing you do if you were starting from scratch is you would go to the merchant group code to set up a group of MCCs that you either want to restrict, or maybe you only want someone to be able to be able to swipe their card at gas stations. You can easily Google this online to see different merchant category codes. eZBusiness also has this listed in here. So for example, you can easily find merchant codes that start with 799. Perhaps maybe you want to block all of these so that cardholders can't use their card at tourist attractions, etc. But like I said, eZBusiness lists them all in here. There are over 1,000. So I would recommend Googling or using a search engine to figure out what you would like to block. Or like I said, you can do it the opposite way. You can maybe find, and maybe you want your drivers to only be able to use pay at gas stations. You could set up a merchant group code just with for gas stations and gas dispensers, and then restrict everything else on the card. So we'll jump more into that when we actually set up the spending limits. But let's go back to our example where we're going to restrict a few MCCs. So I'm going to set this up. I'm going to select all of these. You can also input your own range if you don't want to use this list. If we went and showed that, you can basically put in the first MCC that you want to restrict, put in a dash for the range, and then put the ending MCC that you want to restrict. So basically what this is saying is this merchant group code is going to consist of all merchant category codes from 7991 to 7997. And so we can go ahead, and if we're ready for this, then we can go ahead and submit this. But you also, just for awareness, could add more ranges if you'd like to. You can make this pretty custom. Let's go ahead and submit this, and it's going to make us it's going to, of course, make us label this. That would be helpful. So it utilizes 2-digit codes that you can review later. I'm going to call this, we already have one called 79 from other trainings and demos. I'm going to call this one 80. And I'm going to call this, put that again. And let's call this our demo GC. And click submit. So now it's going to make you review that. You click confirm. And now you've created a merchant group code, which once again just groups together as different MCCs. So now that you've done that first step, you're going to go to manage spending limits, where you can set spending limits at the company level, meaning that all card holders would have that restriction or that limit, or you can set them up at the card holder level. Let's go ahead and set this up for the company level. you can select the frequency of that spinning limit. So for example, if you're setting this up per statement cycle, then per statement cycle, whatever you set this to, let's say we set it to, I don't want someone to spend more than $1,000 for certain merchant category codes. That's how you would set this up. If you want it to be annually, set it for yearly, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm just going to choose cycle, and you can look at the MGCs that you have set up here. So let's go ahead and select. I think I need to refresh my page. So that's always a good learning thing. If you set something up and you don't see it there, when in doubt, you can go back to your online requests, because I do not see our 80 code that we set up. And there it is. I'm going to select our merchant group code 80 that we just set up in this video. You can even see the detail of what you have set up there. So this group consists of all of these MCCs. We've not restricted anything yet by setting up the MGC. We're just making a group of codes. This field here is going to be what is the limit per transaction. So for example, if you don't want them to be able to spend make any transactions, you could set that to be 0 and decline. If you wanted them to be able to spend some, but no more than, say, like 1,000 per transaction, you could input 1,000. And then if you wanted them to only be able to do a certain number of transactions, so not the dollar amount, but the number of transactions, you would input that here. I'm going to just use a scenario of saying I don't want them to do anything. So their transaction limit is $0 and they can't perform any transactions. And I'm going to set those to be declining. And then you're going to go ahead and click Apply Limits. And just so I don't confuse people, I have some set up from other training videos. Now this is down here in the merchant group mapping, which this is basically the end-all be-all of what are you actually setting up to limit people to. So this was basically setting it up. This is now displaying it and summarizing that we said for merchant group code 80, the transaction limit is 0. I'm going to decline all transactions entered above that value, which is 80. I'm going to allow no transactions to happen. I'm going to decline those. And then what do we want other merchants to do? So for anything that's not in this 79 range that we just created, I'm going to, for the sake of demoing, I'm going to approve those. So meaning that they can use their card at those merchants. You have the option to, though it's not necessary, to exclude an MGC. So this is an interesting thing where perhaps you have an MGC that has several things that you want to decline, but you want to allow perhaps one thing for one card holder. So let's say we were doing this at an account level, and you wanted to allow someone to be able to do membership clubs, but everything else you wanted to restrict. So what you would do is you would set up an MGC, a merchant group code, specifically for the 7997 code. And let's just say that we made that and made it 81. So for that one card holder, you would basically set everything up the exact same that we did here. You would decline everything for 80, but for that one group, you would basically say exclude that. I want those to be I want that to be approved. I don't want that to be part of the restriction that I'm setting up here. So I know I went through that quickly, but that's briefly explaining that field and giving you your scenario. So from here, you can input a memo just to keep record of what you were creating, and go ahead and click submit. It's going to make you review everything. You click confirm, and now you've successfully made a spending limit. And this was for your entire company. So usually it's going to want you to back out there. And now when you go ahead and if you want to review these, you can either review them by going back to the manage spending limit page, and you'll see that it still exists there. Or you can go to that company reporting that we showed earlier. And this is where you can see spend restrictions either at the account level. So this tab here is going to show things at the account level, and I set one up earlier for demoing purposes. Or when you go to view merchant group codes, you're going to view all of your MGCs that you've set up, and it will indicate whether you have set that up at the company level or not. So you can see that that 80 that we had set up is yes, at the company level. So that's how you're going to go back and see what you have set up. I know there was a lot, there were spend restrictions. There's a lot of different things that you could set up. So if you need help with that, don't hesitate to reach out to our treasury support team. Here's their phone number, here is their email, and they would be happy to help you with setting up spend restrictions or anything else in eZBusiness or anything else at all. So